and we are live. Welcome to episode 6 of the Reyes of Reyes podcast. Like always, I'm here, and as is Heather. This time we are joined by JR. How are you doing, JR?
Oh man, I'm doing good. It's an honor to be here on the Razor Burn podcast. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Jack. But more importantly, thank you guys, the audience, the listeners, the viewers, for supporting the content. Hopefully, we bring you some value today, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Very well said. I will like to say that, just like the last episode, everyone and their mother is still on the internet. So there may be some latency issues in both video and sound. In post, I generally do my best to salvage anything. I've done 5 or 6 sound checks and we're okay. But if there's anything that could be perceived as an issue, my bad. There's not much we can do. But we're trying to do these weekly for all of you to ensure that you all remain entertained as you're in lockdown.
Yes.
We're going to keep doing that for this foreseeable future as well. And of course, loads of people being inside, you're going to get loads of people on the internet. And with stress becomes inconsistency. So let's kick off with these icebreaker questions.
Yes. So,
All right, let's see
JR.
what you got. Dang it, I'm
I
almost
have a
nervous
few-
now.
No. Okay, so we'll start out easy. What is your favorite, pie, cake, or cookie?
Pie, cake, or cookie?
Yep. Which one's your
Uh,
favorite and what
I
kind
thought you said pie
specifically?
cake. I was going to say, is that some sort of
Yeah, I
American
was
thing?
Pie,
Pie,
Okay.
cake,
cake,
cookie.
cookie. Oh man. Um, Out of those three, I'm gonna have to say brownie. Yep.
What the hell? Whatever.
No,
Okay.
probably pie. I like pecan pie.
Oh, I made pecan
Yeah.
pie today for Easter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a favorite around here as well. Okay, so now we're going to get into some really good questions here. Would you rather have skin that changes color based on your emotions or tattoos that change showing what you did the day
Oh
before?
man, that's difficult. That's
We'll
difficult.
do the mood ring skin.
Yeah.
I'll take the.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can control that probably better.
I feel like having a tattoo that showed what you did the day before is kind of like a no-go.
Yeah, fuck that.
Not every day, but some days it's kind of like, no,
Yeah.
can't do that.
Like a full back piece that just shows your day, like a comic strip.
Exactly. Um, would you rather have your hands get perpetually smaller or feet that get constantly longer?
That's a good question.
Wow. Let's go with the big feet, the Bozo, the clown shoes.
Won't
Yeah,
that get
we'll
really
do that.
annoying though? Because I can imagine. But then, how small will your hands
Better
eventually
than not
get?
having
Yeah,
hands.
but will your hands get like to nothingness, or will you just have really small hands? Because I think I'd take
Really small.
really small hands against really big feet. Like you end up walking on your own feet. That'd be really annoying.
But what if you're 50 and you have these little toddler hands and you can't grab anything? That's just annoying.
Yeah, I guess.
Have like these
Can't
little
win.
miniature.
That's why the 3 inch
Can't win.
handles
They're
sell,
both.
by the way. There's people with the tiny hands.
Yeah, like the gem handles. I can't do those things. They're just too small. Okay, so this is the last one actually. Would you rather always have green lights or no waiting in line?
Say that. What was the last one? All green lights. We're talking like traffic driving.
Yeah, would you rather have all green lights or no
Uh,
waiting in line, like at the store or shopping or whatever?
oh man. Probably the no
DMV.
waiting. Yeah, no waiting, and then front row parking everywhere I go. That'd be pretty awesome too.
Yeah, because okay, so I've talked to you about this before. Where you
Oh,
work, when you park, it
oh
literally
yeah,
takes an hour to park at work.
yeah,
Fuck's sake.
That's
yeah. Depending on what
crazy.
time you go, the plant or the compound is just a ton of people, a small space, limited parking. So when there's and like I said, it goes back to certain times of the day. If you go between like a 1 hour window, all the spots are going to fill up because they're all like clocking in at that time. But I try to avoid it by going in early and getting there before and
It's
getting a
funny
spot.
actually.
Otherwise, you are going to park far away and you're going to walk
We
along
were
the park
staying in an
distance.
Airbnb in San Francisco, And the nature of San Francisco is that no one has enough money to own big enough property to park on their property. So you pretty much just
Well,
fight
yeah.
for street parking. I'm not exaggerating. Sometimes you might need to walk 20, 25 minutes from your car to the fucking place you're staying.
That's
It's a
crazy.
pain. Imagine if you have groceries, man, and there's just nowhere to kind of like park your car. It's just a huge pain in the ass.
Be dropping them off at the curbs.
Absolutely. Yeah, but then if you're on your own, you have to be like, they better not get stolen.
Yeah, that's
No,
crazy.
it's
I
incredibly
can't
annoying.
imagine that.
Okay, let's talk about shaving and not parking. This isn't Top Gear. So I guess our first topic of today, of many fantastic topics, my ad, is acquisition disorder. Now, it's something that I think is spoken about, but not in depth per se. Uh, our guest has a very good insight on acquisition disorder. I will ask you, JR, what are your opinions on acquisition disorder?
So I like that we're going here, right? So today is going to be JR the wet shaver, JR the hobbyist. We're not going to play JR the brush guy or Reyes restores. Um, I I got an honest, and like I said, I'll be 100% honest, and I will be transparent about my journey because acquisition disorder is something that I certainly went through. All the different facets between brushes and razors and soaps and creams and aftershaves. I mean, you name it. Everything. There's so much variety and
Yeah.
there's so much that you want to try or say that you've tried or share that it's just like you have this never satisfied feeling. I think that's the best way for me to describe it. No matter what I got, I always researched more, I always heard about more, I always found more, and then I had to try that. So, I mean, you end up just going deep down a rabbit hole of, the gear and different items.
Yeah, I mean,
Was that because you were? Go ahead.
no. By all means, go for it.
Was that because you felt like you always had to have the latest and greatest,
Yeah,
or because there are so many new releases, it seems like, or was that because you felt like you needed to try everything, whether it was new or old?
So, if I rewind back to the beginning, um, the community wasn't as I don't want to say as big. I want to say that we didn't have the Facebook and the Instagram, and we didn't have, I guess, the platforms and as much um, awareness, or just it was basically a lot of forums. And when even then, like there was YouTube videos, it was forums, and once you kind of open this door to this world, you get to see that there's community. You get to see that there's all these people who um, have collections, and they have like so many things that you almost feel like you're brand new. You feel like you're behind this learning curve, and you feel like you need to catch up to kind of you know what you're talking about or experience and try things. So that's kind of what happened to me. Like I got into brushes, but I didn't want to just try one. I wanted to try each different type of hair. I wanted to try the horse and the badger and the boar and the synthetics. And same thing with soaps. You find all these different artisans, all these different brands, all these different scents. Same with razors, DE, SE. Like there's so many different variations that you're almost overwhelmed by these options. And
Mhm.
the right thing to do is to kind of like stop and focus, use what you have, work on your technique, and keep the shave results as the priority. But
it's funny,
sadly, it
actually.
just wasn't the case for me. It became trying and trying
Yeah,
and trying, and
I think my thing and my personality is very much geared towards trying the best, right? And although the best is very subjective, I'd say nowadays there are metrics people can go off of to chase what you would define as the best. And I think it's kind of difficult to, as a beginner, I notice on my videos more than anything, I say this is really good, you should try this. And someone will comment, is that the best? Because I only want to try the best. my response to them is I really like it, and I think it's important that you try most things. But I think at the start of your shaving journey, I think you should try those more point of entry products, because I think to get to those kind of like really high quality luxe items, I think for one you'd have more appreciation for those, and for two, it's
Mm.
important you form your own buying decisions. You might end up buying one of these luxury items and say, man, that wasn't worth it. Like, it's
Right.
not that much of a step from what he defines as point of entry to the best. It just wasn't worth it. And I prefer people kind of did that slow, gradual, kind of like buying more expensive items. And again, I'll caveat that by saying more expensive doesn't always mean better. Um, but I think,
You've got you've got people here's okay, so when it comes to veterans, we all have the same type of advice for newer people entering the hobby, and we tell them to start with better budget gear.
yeah,
You know, you can have quality stuff that's wallet friendly. You don't need to go and break the bank. But yet you have these newer people who come in and they ask the same questions, and it's all revolved around what's the
yeah,
best. And I get it if you're the type of person who values quality over quantity, like you don't want to mess around. Let me go straight to the good stuff. But like you said, the good stuff is not necessarily the most expensive. You can
yeah,
still get, like a good quality product that's going to last you, that's going to give you plenty of time to learn and not have to aggressively buy, sell, trade, and continue to try things. And I feel that me personally, when I did that, I didn't give the products enough
me too.
time to properly evaluate them. I would smell it, not for me, keep it
Yeah,
going. I would try it a couple shaves, nah, that wasn't working. Like I always felt like there was something better, like around the corner, and I felt like there had to be something that would instantly work. Instead, I wasn't putting in the time to learn these products. I guess,
I th- I think a big thing
correctly.
Yeah.
now is everything does work for the most part, right? So what is that thing inside your brain that tells you after buying a tub of sterling that performs fantastically to say, sterling isn't really good enough anymore, which it is, because I can almost guarantee if you've just got into this, you're not using something as good as sterling. There's no chance. So if you're using sterling and there's something in your head that says there's got to be better than this, what are the experiences you're having to make you want to chase that? And I think it's the big influence this community has. From my perspective, anyway, once you start hitting that social media aspect of traditional wet shaving, you start seeing those guys, and you'll know who I'm talking about, JR. They have the most luxurious collection of gear that you're like, well, that must be better because he's using it all the time and he has so much stuff and this is what he uses most of the time. Like, it's easy to get under the, I guess, under the influence of other people based on what they are using and what you're seeing in front of your face.
I can agree with that to a point, right? Like you said, if you are if you're constantly scrolling through save of the day pictures every day and you're constantly scrolling through mail call pictures every day and then you're surfing buy sell trade items, so you're basically surrounding yourself with this um, gear, and you're potentially
Yeah,
triggering
yeah,
yourself to say, well, I haven't tried that yet. Or you get curious about these products, and maybe you'll message out or leave a comment and you'll ask these guys how they felt about it, and 9 out of 10 times they're going to say something
yeah,
positive, or they're going to say something favorable, and then you're like, well, crap, if he said that, then now I got to try it,
yeah.
or I got to find a way to get it as well, just so that you can have your own opinion. But
Yeah. So, what
it's
kind of
tough.
repercussions do you see? I mean, because a lot of people don't talk about this, and there can be repercussions because we all have our limit on what we're either willing to spend or can spend, right? I mean, that's the two things. Like either like as Will said, is he has the issue of it's just soap. So I have a mindset of I'm not going to spend over 15, 20, 25, 30, whatever it may be, you have that mindset that you're not going to spend over that because it's just soap. Or we all have like our financial restrictions, obviously. So, what do you think people see as far as like the repercussions coming back from, having this obsession with getting new things constantly, whether it's
It's
an old product you haven't tried yet or a new product that you must try? Like, what do you think is, some of the issues that
I
causes?
mean, strain on your wallet, strain on your family, you know?
Yeah,
Those are the
strain
those
on
are
your
the two
wallet for sure.
things, right? I mean, I've heard loads and loads of situations about people that can't afford it, putting things on your credit card. By all means, if you can afford it, you can go buy whatever the hell you want. I don't care. But all I'm going to say is if you can't afford it and you're getting a line of credit to buy shaving gear, there's probably better things you could be using that line of credit for.
So
Yeah.
I will admit, right? I got addicted to the mail
Yeah.
calls. I got addicted to the new box arriving in the mail and cracking it open and seeing the new product and giving it a smell, giving it a try. I didn't like it took me time to get to that point of realization, but that is what I enjoyed the most. And sadly, when you get addicted to constantly trying to get
The thing
something
is,
new or
how
just
many
receive
times did you try
something,
those products?
a lot of times I didn't use
It's
it a lot.
crazy,
And there was
isn't
a lot
it?
of times what the worst part, check this out, is when I would buy something, it came in and I'm already buying more products before I even use the first one. So I've got 3 or 4 soaps build up, lined up,
Oh
stacked on
man,
each other, and I haven't even used one. Like you're sitting there like, well, crap. Why am I buying more if I haven't even tried the one that showed up on
dude,
Monday or 3 days?
I
Yeah.
have.
I
And
mean,
I'm gonna
it's
tell on JR, he can only shave like once every 4 or 5 days here, guys. So
that's right.
it's not
This is
like
the dumbest hobby for a guy like me, right? Like I can only shave 2 or 3 times a week, and yet I'm wanting to have more products, and I wish I could shave every day, but I literally cannot. So it's foolish. It's almost like, what are you doing? Like,
the
why are
uh,
you in a shaving hobby when you barely have
the
anything
hair's
to
got to
shave?
go.
But my answer to that is going to be the people. It's the community, it's the relationships. It's not necessarily the product or the act. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still like it, but I don't get to shave every single day like some people.
It's
I think as a hobby, wet shaving is definitely more personable than other hobbies can be, right? Like, um, and maybe it's because I have an artisan perspective, but I see that like customers and people who follow you, they want to know you, to be connected to you, and I think that definitely helps that association. I don't want to say draws them in, but it kind of does. And I notice whenever I'm incredibly busy and I don't have as much time to do like the in-depth responses on my social media that I like to do, because I do like to respond to every message that I get. But sometimes if I'm just overwhelmed, and have a lot going on, I can't do those in-depth responses that I like to do. But I feel like that's what really draws people into this community, because there's a lot of hobbies out there that you can buy however much, crap that you want. But I feel like this is definitely a little bit more of a
yeah,
personable hobby. As far as knowing, like, I feel like we're also more accountable because of that. The community knows us more, I think, for the
I
most
agree.
part, for most artisans. And so I think we're also held more accountable because
I
of
think
that. So it's a little bit different than most hobbies,
as a
I think,
consumer
because,
base, I think all of the consumers are closer to the makers because, frankly, a
yeah,
lot of the makers are also consumers. Um,
right. Yep.
they consume other products, a vast majority of them, right? I don't think that's out of
Right.
place to say. I think the difficulty arises really when, like JR said, you have so much on the shelf. I have so much on the shelf at the moment. I got those new soaps from grooming department. I haven't even used them. I've not used them yet, and I know I'm gonna like them, but there's so much for me to use in the interim. I just have so much backed up, and it's not like I'm getting sent these things for free all the time. Things that I even buy are sat on the shelf for a long period of time and I'm not using them. And I think I was probably a bit worse than that when I first started. Like you said, I'd use something once, and I can guarantee I still have loads of soaps in there that I've used just once. And it's not because my first experience with that soap was it was bad or it was average. In fact, most of the time it was pretty good. I just have so much variety I can use all the time, and even that boggles my brain.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. That is something that definitely happened. You know, you get to a point where you're getting so much gear that you accumulate this overwhelming
Yeah,
majority, and you find yourself staring at your stacks or your rack or your display or whatever the case may be, and you're like, dang, what do I
yeah,
even shave
every
with?
day.
Like you're stumped to like it's struggle to even figure out what to
Yeah.
use. And here's one thing I wanted to bring up. When you talk about acquisition disorder, I I always question like why does wet shaving have permission? You know, when we walk into our bathroom, how come we don't have 14 deodorants? How come we don't have 22 toothbrushes? How come I don't have 10 toothpaste with matching mouthwash or 50 sets of shampoo and conditioner? But for some reason, wet shaving, you have this allow you have the ability to have this huge collection of shaving gear, and it's like I don't understand that. Like why
Yeah.
does this get permission and that other
I
stuff doesn't?
think I may have an answer to that, or at least a bit of an
There
answer,
you go.
right? So let's say, um, I don't know how much of a community there is for toothbrushes or deodorant, but let's say there was. I don't know how many.
There's a little bit.
Okay, but I don't know how many artisans are making stuff for that. You know, at this point, there are a lot of artisans making good stuff. It's much easier to say, well, this is only $15 and this is only $20. This is only $30. Although, like within inside the community, $30 is perceived as a lot of money. $30 isn't much money. If you think about like
Yeah.
what other hobbies you could be doing, like buying firearms or buying guns,
There
dude,
Yeah.
we
you
go.
could be.
They at least okay. So real quick, what you're saying is what I hear all the time, right? People will say this is a healthier, this is a safer, this is a
The
less
affordable
harmful
hobby.
hobby than something else. And let me ask you this too. Tell me if this has happened to you. Somebody will make a comment. Probably the person you're living with will make a comment like, "Do you really need all that gear?" Or "I can't believe you have so much." And your answer is, "Well, I don't have anything. You should see so and so. You should see somebody else's collection who has like probably 2 or 3 times as much as you." And we almost like defend what we have because there's always somebody out there who has more. And we're like, "Well, at least I'm not that guy."
So
Yeah.
I'm in a fortunate position where there's a way for me to offset cost in this hobby. Not everyone is.
Yeah,
But at the
correct.
same time, I can promise you, I've never had that conversation. Never.
Really? Wow.
Hmm.
Well, I'm sure there's people who out there probably
Oh
will
man.
say, you know,
Uh,
because it's almost like you see some of these den sizes or these massive mail calls, and you're like, wow,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I take
But there's
Mine
a
pride
has.
little bit
in
of
the fact
maybe a little
I take
jealousy,
pride
a
in the
little
fact that I
envy.
only have 50 soaps. I don't fucking need 50 soaps. What do I need 50 soaps for? You know? I'm
Yeah.
never gonna use
Yeah,
that.
My husband is an avid like hunter and like gun collector because he just loves shooting and he really doesn't have a lot of hobbies. Those are pretty much his two like big things. And I mean for him to buy, 30 soaps is nothing compared to buying a gun or the ammo to go shoot one of those guns for the day because sometimes especially now where we're like we're doing social distancing. He's not really going into the office and working as far as that goes. So we have property set up where he can go out and shoot, right? So he has all this freedom to go shoot as much as he wants. And so he can go spend 4, 5, 6 hours shooting if he wants.
Yeah.
So really, if you compare it to some hobbies, I mean, technically it is an affordable luxury, but we also have our
My
limits,
question
budget
though,
wise, mentality
are
wise.
we not looking at this in the sense that thinking of 30 soaps from a perspective of like a very utilitarian standpoint is a lot. As a hobbyist, can you think of many hobbies where people won't try and acquire quite a bit of that stuff? Like if you collect pocket
it,
knives or something.
that's what I was just about
Yeah.
to comment on. I was going to say that it is a collection type of
Yeah.
thing. It is a hobby, and I guess that is what gives it the permission aspect or the permission factor. But I know me personally, like whenever I get into something, like I go all in
Yeah.
and I want to learn and I want to research and I want to find out and I want to dig. So, I mean, I did it with like golf. I've done it with other sports where, the same thing
JR the
happens where
golfer.
but the same thing happens, you're spending a lot of time, you're spending a lot of attention, you're doing a lot of research because
Yeah.
it's something that really interests you. And then you just go all in. And next thing you know, you've got a whole bunch of gear. So the pattern or the cycles are the same regardless of what the hobby is. So it translates into the
Do you think
different
a lot of it is
things,
fear of missing
whether it be
out?
healthy or unhealthy.
Honestly, do you think
Say
a
what?
lot of it is fear of missing out?
Oh, geez, the old.
Do you
FOMO.
think? No, honestly, because
Okay, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to be honest here. I'm trying.
Yes.
I really. It's sad, but I really wish it wasn't. But I think that okay, so there is a shared enthusiasm that comes with people acquiring new
yeah,
stuff. So I think sometimes that excitement or that joy kind of just like oozes
oh,
out
it
of
does.
people and they want to know if other people got it as well. And I
Yeah.
think that particular action can create some of that within your friends, within your community. It doesn't have to be on full blast, right? It could just be something subtle in a group chat or a private group, and people are just like, hey, did you get that? Or did you get this? Or they're excited to share that they got something else. And it does, it creates a level of it, yes. But I'm not a fan of when it's used in a, like a marketing tactic or nah.
No, but
I
you guys
kind
do
of
it to
see
yourself.
that. Say what?
You guys do it to
I know
yourself, though.
you've made that comment before, and I don't understand what you mean by that.
Because there are some makers who try to create FOMO based around a release, right? But the majority of us don't. But you guys create your own FOMO regarding a release. There's been times that I thought there's no way this is going to sell out, or I never expected it to, like, even close to being selling out whenever it's dropped. But then I'm getting like 10, 20, 30 messages saying what time, what time, what time. And I'm like, what does it matter what time? Like the first time, like I think it was Mariner, the first time I experienced that. And I'm like, what does it matter what time? I'll put it out whenever I put it
That's
out. Like I didn't understand like why everybody was so worried about it. And they were so worried because it was going to sell out. And I'm like, it's not going to sell out. Like why would, it just didn't make sense to me.
that to me that's more recent, right? It
Absolutely.
wasn't that way all the time in years past. So I think that here's what I will say. As the consumer, we don't have the insight and we don't know exactly how many of the product is going to be available, right? The numbers or the quantity is not very transparent all the time, and that's fine. Like if it's not for the artisan to share, it's not. But I think that there have been instances where a low quantity of a product was quickly sold out, and then it created this panic of like, dang, I missed it, but nobody knows
So
how
it's
many
funny
of
you
that
say that
particular item were even available.
because
So when you try to like, I guess that's what's hard is like if we knew exactly how
dude,
many,
I don't even think that would make a difference.
then
Do you honestly? Like, let's say if Heather
oh,
said there's 250
okay,
of these. Oh, there's 250. 250 people might buy it. I need to have it. I don't think a number will make
but I think
sense. I don't
okay,
think a number will make a
what I
difference.
mean by the but what I mean by that, the FOMO was that when the people who wanted a particular item missed out on it, that is what they shared, or that is what they voiced, or that is what the frustration that
Yeah.
came out was. Dang it, I had it. It was in a cart, but then it disappeared, or you know what I mean? Like those are the stories that spread. Those are the things. No, there's people
Yeah.
saying that they got it, but there's more people saying that they missed out on it, and that frustration is what's coming out, and that is what I think created some of those instances of like, well, crap, because he missed out or because that sold out last time, I need to be faster, I need to be quicker, or
Right.
I'll tell you
That's
you know what
something
I
that's
mean?
why
funny
I'm saying
actually.
that you guys create your
I'll tell
own.
you something funny. I'm not going to say specifically who it was, but we released an aluminum drop recently. It was a pretty limited
Yeah,
drop. It sold out in under a minute. We had those similar complaints, but I also had people emailing us asking me to show them how to buy things quickly. Yeah.
No, that's the thing. There's insider secrets to
Yeah.
how they log in or what payment method they're using,
It's
whether it be the
Yeah.
PayPal or
it is,
Apple
yeah.
Pay or something like
Apple
that.
Pay is the fastest.
TDR does that, right? That darn Rob
I
does that on
I
his
would never
releases.
do
He'll
that.
say, "Well, like do this, do that. These are the things I can suggest. I'm not going to say they're
I
going to work
really
for you." But now
dislike
that he's
it.
doing more regular,
You just
now that he's doing more regular drops, though, it's probably not as much of an issue. But whenever back in the day, he would say, "All I can tell you is to be logged on and ready, or do this or do that. I can't tell you like anything specific, but these will help."
yeah.
Um,
For me,
yeah,
I don't want to create that sort of mentality. Like if someone asked me to show them, as Jack, the person that doesn't work for Carve, I probably would. But as someone who is part of the company, I just don't want to create that level of mentality. I don't
yeah.
like it
No, I
personally.
get it.
It's
Yeah,
I understand where they're coming from. Like if they really wanted a razor, if they really wanted a soap, and they did miss out on it, and they kept missing out on it, yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry, but I just I don't want to breed that. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it's it seems a bit as a vendor for me that seems just a bit dirty.
yeah. No, I agree. I really don't like doing that. I will obviously put my stuff out there whenever I have it, like the number one, for example. This time I only had 8 EDPs for this release, because I'm literally running out of the fragrance. I need to
Yeah,
like re-up that if I'm going to continue it. And so it was what it was. I only had so many, but the soaps and the balms I had a lot more of. So I was like, hey guys, it's redropping, but I'm just letting you know there's not very many EDPs. So kind of like that may be something you want to get if that's what you're wanting to pick up. But I don't try to do that because I don't like that
neither do
FOMO.
I.
Um, yeah, and I try to really not push like I only have this many. Like sometimes I do only have like my two new drops I have coming. I'm only going to have so many and that's fine. I think I have plenty, but I don't like to try to
No,
constantly push
because
that
you're creating
amount.
competition for your product. The
Yeah,
competition for me should be the
exactly.
quality of the product, right? People want it because it's good.
Right.
People don't. I
Yeah.
don't want people to want it because it's difficult to get. I I, I don't
Yeah.
like that. But if we revisit an original point, I'd like to get JR's opinion on this. Really, do you think
What do you
do you
got?
think we have a community that encourages mass buying or acquisition disorder?
You mean enablers? Is
Not
that
so
what?
much
Yeah.
enablers, but
Yeah. Enablers.
no, I guess using the
That's
right term, yeah.
so. There's two things that I say to this, right? And it all depends on who you're kind of surrounding yourself with, and you're going to find what you're looking for. So if you are a person who is on the hunt, if you're the person who is like researching or you have, a target in
Yeah,
mind that you want to go and find, then you're going to go
you are,
find it
yeah.
and you're going to look for it and you're going to ask around. And so sometimes having connections or people can help you find that particular item. But in terms of just like, I don't want to say useless buying or numb. It's tough. It is tough because, and going back to the surrounding yourself, right? Like, if you don't want to buy anymore, then you really have to like block or shield or
Yeah,
shut
you do.
off what you're exposing yourself to,
Absolutely.
right? Like, you have to go and maybe
Yeah.
potentially unfollow some vendors or stay off of some websites or disconnect from a group for a while. Like, I always encourage people to just take a break,
Would that
take
would
a
that be your
break,
advice to
you
people
know.
who are struggling with it?
Say, what do you mean by struggling?
If
Struggling
they
with what?
know they shouldn't be buying as much as they are, if they're having some stigma in their home life for buying too much, what would your advice be
Okay.
to those people to stop doing it?
Okay. So if your priorities have obviously gotten out of whack, right? And here's some quick red flags for you. If you are buying products and you're having it shipped to like your work address or you're having it
There's
shipped to a
loads
friend's
of
house or
people that
a
I know
neighbor's
who do
house,
that.
if you are if you're rushing home because you know what time the mailman's going to be there and you want to intercept that package before somebody else gets home,
Yeah.
if you're a guy who tears it open in the car and then you stick it in your pocket and then you sneak into your bathroom and then you sneak it under,
Credit card
stuff it away in
statements,
a
you
drawer
hide
or
in them.
something. these are all things that I know from experience. These are all things that are warning flags that it's getting out of control. It's getting out of you no longer have control of it. It has control of
Yeah.
you. And it's probably best when you start to see some of this behavior to take a step back and have some self-awareness to say, it's getting out of hand. I might have gone too far. I'm getting off the rails. I need to refocus, disconnect, and stop with so much, I guess, noise is what I call it, right? You have to silence the noise. All you're doing is like trying to drink from a fire hose, and it can be too much. If that's your nature, if that is your personality, um, it is addicting.
How would you
So
take a step
kind of
back?
have to
Like,
treat it that way.
think of the common behavior of someone who has the acquisition disorder. What would you do? Would you unfollow the artisans? Would you kind of like stay away from social media for a while? What would you do?
Like I said, speaking from experience, I knew my problem was mail calls, right? I knew that it was the acquisition, it was the
Yeah.
excitement of having something new arrive. So, with that being said, I had to literally like get away from all buy sell trade, right? Like if here's another thing too, right? Like not only do I enjoy mail calls, but I love a good deal.
Oh, me too.
So if something is on sale, if something's on discount, or I see like an opportunity to wheel and deal and barter with somebody, I'm gonna jump at that too. So there's things that I know about myself that I knew were unhealthy that I had to block or avoid or literally like force myself out of that environment so that I didn't do that type of
Yeah.
behavior.
It's difficult.
JR taught me the value of bartering in this community though, and he taught me all about like trade hoeing basically. Because I can be pretty good at it
Because
sometimes. I'm
here's
like,
what I'll say: a lot of what we buy is blind buys.
Oh,
Let's
it
be
is.
honest. A lot of what we get is blind buys, and there's so much personal preference
yeah,
in the performance, in the scent, that a lot of times we have shave gear that we're not going to reach for, we're not going to use,
yeah.
and instead of like taking the time to either post it or sell it, or I mean, sometimes I use that as
Me
currency.
too.
It's like its own little shave currency
Well,
and
I'm
barter and
not
trade
lying.
bait, as I call it.
I've
Yeah.
bought soaps that I know I'm not gonna like because they're currency.
Oh, like they have a high value or probability of flipping or
Yeah.
turning, not flipping, stop, on being able to find a new home, right? Be able to
So
offer it up for adoption
here's the
and
thing.
off
I
it
know
go.
there are some rare soaps that I am after. If I pick this up and wait a couple of months, it will be on the same level as that soap I'm after. I can use that. I can use that in
Oh,
a trade or a part of a barter, and
yeah.
it works. And honestly, the difficulty is, and I've actually unfollowed loads of places with where BSTs happen because I found myself doing the same thing. Oh, let's browse that BST, see if there's a good deal happening,
Yeah.
because I'm going to be on that good deal. And the problem is, as someone that does have that way to offset that cost through BSTs, I can't do that. It doesn't work the same
Gotcha.
way.
Yeah.
So when I'm buying stuff
Yeah.
pre-owned, I'm actually fucking myself a little bit, quite frankly.
No, it's true.
So
I hear
but before we kind of leave this topic behind, my advice to the beginners getting into this, looking for the best, is most things you're using are probably good enough. Uh, if you're having good shaves as it is, getting more expensive soaps, more expensive razors, it's going to enhance your experience, but keep in mind the metric you should be going after is that end result. Did I get a good shave? And if you follow that metric, I can guarantee you won't be buying that much because most artisans, if not pretty much all artisans now, they make a stellar product. And because they make a stellar product, for the most part, you're not really going to go wrong with even any of the budget brands. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, you're not ever going to get, I don't think, I mean, can you say that there's any artisan brands per
No.
se that are worse than using like a can product? I
I
don't think
don't
so,
think
right?
Tobbs is very good, for example. I think if someone's picked up Taylor of Old Bond Street and they look at this as remarkable, don't get me wrong, I might get some flack for saying this. I don't think Tobbs is very good. I recommend beginners things like Sterling, Shannon soap, Soap Commander, things that are really high value products. By value, I'm measuring value based on the metric of both cost and performance. If something's really cheap and is still shit, that's still terrible value.
Yeah.
Just bear that in mind.
Like Arco's, not necessarily better than Gillette foam.
No, actually,
or Barbasol.
precisely. Just bear that in mind,
Yeah.
and I think that's important. What do you have to say, JR?
Yeah.
Kind of closing off this topic.
About acquisition
Yeah,
disorder?
if you were to give anyone advice, or I guess an ethos to remember, what would you say?
It goes back to kind of what you said. If your priority, if your focus, if your goal is to just do what works best for you, right? It's easier said than done,
It is.
but if you can minimize the amount of influence or I guess like urge to constantly try to find something new. Eh, One of the dead giveaways is that we've never even finished a tub
I
of
haven't.
soap. We keep buying and keep buying and we don't even finish anything. Give products some time. There is no race, all right? This is a journey. This is a long journey. You should be thankful that you found it, right? I think everybody who gets into it wishes they could have found it sooner, but but once you do find it, the stuff's not going anywhere, right? There's plenty of product. You're not going to miss out. There's always plenty of opportunity. It's a personal journey with so many things that will work for you that may not work for the other guy. So I think it's important to just keep that as your focus, right? Just do what works best for you. A good example is injectors, man. I never gave them the time of day. I thought they were cheap. I thought they had like minimum blade choices. I thought they were kind of like just not as cool, so to speak. So I never even used them. And then, 5, 6, 7 years later, I come across a couple in the antique store, like brand new. I give them a shot and I fall in love with them. And I'm like, dang it, all the money I could have saved from buying all these other razors
Yeah.
before, if I would have just like went and tried this first.
The problem is you're approaching
you live
that.
and you learn. You're going to make mistakes.
You're approaching that from I found what works for me. There's often the case where I find what works for me. I'm still going to buy more. Because something might work better. Remember that.
But that's true. That is true. It's almost like I had to experience all of those bad or not as
That's
good
exactly what I
shaves
mean.
before I found the thing that, and it's more for me. It was about consistent results, without having a fear of cutting myself or without a fear of like ingrowns or red bumps coming in. It's really about the results and the quality of shave. And once you find kind of what works, you don't need to be so aggressive about trying the next thing or the latest and greatest all the time.
That's a good way to cap it off. What about you, Heather?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit of a different position because I have very sensitive skin and I also have a lanolin issue and I can use some soaps with lanolin, but a lot of them definitely will rash me out, even doing like hand lathers. So I'm less likely to probably venture out than some are. I mean, even though I say I'm not a collector, I easily have 30, 35 soaps probably.
But I imagine a lot of that.
Not including any of my own.
I imagine a lot of that is supporting friends though, isn't it?
It is, yes, and I love supporting like my peers and my friends in the field. And if there is someone who puts out a scent that really appeals to me, that's when I'll really like go for it. But I do love supporting other artisans that I personally like and the products that I like as well. So that really is where most of my stuff comes from. But I don't consider myself a collector, or I don't want to say hobbyist because I'm in the hobby, so it seems weird, but I don't really consider myself that person who needs to try everything new. And part of that is because I'm always worried it's going to cause me issues. It's not because I don't want to try it. So I'm a little bit of a different. It's not, but it is definitely a different position than most because it's not a matter of I don't want to buy it, I don't want to pay for it, or I don't want to try it. It's a matter of I'm worried it's going to like make me rash out for 3 days. So,
that makes sense. I have a question for you, JR. How long have you been in this
what do you got?
kind of wet shaving thing for?
My journey goes back to
That's a
2012,
long
I
time.
believe. I'm prior Air Force, so it was part of our like military requirement to stay clean shaven. I got introduced to it by an old instructor supervisor who gave me a puck of tobacco inside of an Old Spice mug, and he gave me a Smog Boar Owners Club.
That's a good
And
brush to
then
start
you're
with,
not gonna
man.
believe it, but yeah, the so I didn't even know this, right? But I was renting a house, and in the garage I found a Mercur Future.
Wow.
I know. It doesn't make any sense. It was a Mercur Future sitting in a drawer in a garage, and I saw it and I was like, I don't know what this is. Like I mean, when you look at a Mercur
Oh, it
Future, it
looks
just looks so
crazy,
random,
yeah.
right? Like yeah. So but I knew of some of my coworkers, and I knew of this instructor supervisor who had been kind of talking about shaving this way, and I said, I think this is one of those razors they're talking about. So I took it to him. I asked him, and he was just like the same thing, like, you really found a Mercur Future like in the garage? Like, that's so random. Like, how the heck does that happen? And we got to talking about it, and he hooked me up with some of that starter gear, and his thing was practice lathering. I don't care what you're doing. You don't have to shave all the time. Just practice lathering, incorporating water and using the soap and the brush. And man, I was hooked ever
So the
since.
question is then, is you,
Yep.
2012 is a long time, by the way. That's longer than most, I think. At least most in the public eye, so to speak. What has changed the most dramatically over that space of time from that 2012 when you first got in, you were green, to now you're a chiseled veteran? What's changed the most?
I think, hmm, certainly. Okay, so like I said, I like to speak from my own personal
Absolutely.
experience, right? I I was deep into the forums, right? We didn't have the Facebook groups, we didn't have the Instagram that we do today. We had like the Shave Nook, we had the Shave Den, we had Badger and Blade. And what I liked about those platforms was you had all of the topics of discussion, all the questions, all the threads already within that um, website, if you will. So if you had a question or you had something you wanted to research or look up and learn, you were free to do it when you want and how you wanted and as much as you wanted. So that's what I did. Like, I got to research and I got to learn and I got to ask questions. And I don't see that much interaction nowadays, especially on the Instagram platform. It's mostly about the
Yeah.
images and the pictures, and maybe staging some nice looking gear. Um, it's not as much conversation. Um, I mean, you can, if you want to go into the DM and leave comments and
But
take it
would
to
you
the
then
next step.
argue there are
That'd
better
be cool.
platforms for that? Like, I don't really use any of them per se, but you have wet shaving Reddit, you still have Badger and Blade, you have Against the Grain, you have all of these forums that are still used. Do you think
So I
those
think
platforms are better?
correct. I think the option it depends on the person, right? It depends on how you prefer to consume the content. If you're very visual and you like personality and you like people in front of the camera, then you're going to go to YouTube and you're
Yeah.
going to research, right? If you're a reader, and you just like written word and you're going to sit there and just scroll and read all day long, you can probably enjoy Reddit a little better, or some of those old forums. And then if it's just pictures and images and you're going to just scroll and tap and say nice shave, then definitely Instagram is going to help. So the big thing is that you have options. You have a variety, you have a community. This thing is global. I mean, that's one thing that I realized too, is you're talking to people from all these different countries, all these different time zones, and you're interacting with them and you're calling them brother and you got all this stuff, and it's just like, all because we shave our face. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I
so
know
it's
what you
so
mean,
crazy to think about
actually.
it.
I've never thought about it that way
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. So, do you feel like the older platforms are more content and conversation focused versus
Absolutely.
like I would say IG is definitely probably newer as far as the social media type platform, um, and it definitely is more visual versus conversational. So, do you think that like the older platforms are more conversation oriented?
Yes, to a degree, yes. And you still have people who are maybe a little more active, maybe a little more comfortable to comment. I think that, and to me it's almost like a safe space, right? These forums, they have like, the usernames, and you have like the amount of years you've been in there, and you have the threads that you've started, and the conversations and the content, and people will ask you questions, and you're kind of like the go-to guy for certain information. um, but on something like that's to me, that was kind of a good and a bad thing, right? It was
Mhm.
good because you had a place where a lot of knowledge was, right? There's a lot of guys with knowledge, a lot of experience, and if you had questions, you could easily get those answered. What I didn't like is the content in terms of like the how to's or the pictures or the images. All of that was trapped behind and in that little
I
platform.
still think that's
Mhm.
not
So
very
once,
accessible now, quite frankly. I think in terms of a
Right.
modern format of how to do certain things, I don't think there
uh
are many YouTubers even that kind of delve into that. I mean, you might be able to learn something just by watching, but as far as
mhm.
tutorials, there are still very few.
Well, I think that there there was content created maybe years ago that people might not be aware of. We're talking 2012, 13, 14, 15 is when some of those shave tutorials or how-tos, or the focus was maybe a little different in terms of the content and trying to evaluate, critique, or review product. So this is something that I've thought about, and I kind of wish some of these guys who have this archive of information would do, is take some of those videos that may be long videos that have a lot of information, but kind of like chop it up into maybe 10 1-minute segments and reformat that into the modern platforms and get that content and knowledge in front of people to kind of see and get maybe curious about or interested in, and to help kind of, I guess, teach
Do
again,
you
so to
think that would
speak, or
help?
just
Yeah.
show people that there's a
Do you think
different
that would
way.
help getting new
Say again?
shavers into this, or do you think? I think there's a two-pronged answer there. I think a lot of getting
Yeah.
new shavers into this are um, having products that have a slightly that are easy to use or easier to use. I would say. I think that's definitely one aspect. But I think what you just touched on is also a fantastic aspect in the sense that if you have like this archive of really easy to access, understand tutorial videos where you can say, I'm just going to watch this over and over again. It's maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and they're like incredibly specific. I think that's actually a fantastic idea because most content within wet shaving, teaching you how to do stuff, it's like 5 to 15, 20 minutes, right? It's not easily digestible.
Yeah.
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 Here's a good example, right? I don't know if you guys remember, but like Nick Shaves is one of the biggest names in our hobby, right? And he created a ton of content, and then I guess life, got busy for him, and he took a break, and he was gone for a long time, but then he came back. And that first video back, I went to the comment section and I could not believe how many people in there were saying, "You're the guy who got me started. You're the one who showed
Hmm.
me. You're the one who did this." And these are
Yeah.
all names that I had never
Yeah,
seen before. Like, they're not what you see in the
Yeah.
other, groups, or I was like, who the heck are all these people? So there is a large amount of people who come across the content and want to learn, but not necessarily go as far as
yeah,
become a
that's a
hobby or a
fantastic
collector,
point.
Right.
if that makes sense.
They're shavers.
Yes. Yeah, they do it, you know what I mean? Like, they still have the common problems that we all agree that can come from cartridges and canned
Right.
goo. So they have the same problem. They just, find the solution and then stop and stick with it.
Yeah. They don't obsess over it and have to have like 40 soaps in their bathroom.
Yeah.
They have like two.
So my question
You
behind
know?
that
Yeah.
is based on everything you just said, how do we get people into this? Like, I think as a community, for me, I think we all have to have a similar goal in not so much recruiting, because I don't like that word. It's more getting people interested or making people or hopefully convincing people to understand like this is the best way.
Correct. That is the common goal, right? And it's tough because, well, let's just say this, right? We all agree that shaving this way
Yeah.
is better. And we all agree that if we would have found this sooner, we all wish we could
Yeah.
have found it sooner. So, but then we also feel that it's kind of weird. We also kind of have a hesitation or a awkwardness to just, we don't just come out and tell people
Well,
that this
imagine
is our
being on a
hobby.
date
We're not,
and someone
you know,
asking,
yeah, we're
"What are
not,
you into?"
yeah, we're
I
not,
really like
yeah,
razors.
yeah,
I really like to
yeah.
shave.
You should just feel my face right now and just touch my
Really
face.
my
You know, how
thing. Like,
awkward is that?
yeah.
Yeah, we're not very open about the
No.
hobby that we're into with coworkers or friends or strangers.
Yeah.
But here's the thing though, as soon as you do have somebody who's interested or wants
Yeah.
to know more,
Oh,
we
we
light
do.
up and we can talk about this for hours, right? So that's something that the only thing I will comment or add is something that I know from experience, right? And I think it'd be great to kind of reach out to or connect with that military community who has to be clean shaven or other professions that have to be clean shaven. And if you introduce this or, suggest a starter kit or reach out and create content for that community specifically to say, look, these are the answers to some of the problems that you guys are having regarding the way you're shaving. And
I
I don't know,
think
that's a target
I think some
audience I would
companies
go
have done
after.
that fantastically. I think Rockwell have done that very well. I think more recently Supply have done that very well. They have these.
Mhm.
I refrain from using the term aggressive, but they have very obvious marketing that will get people. What's this? Like if you've ever been on Facebook and have been moderately interested in finding a different way to shave, you'll see a Supplier of Rockwell ad there. And I think that's a good way of getting people involved. Like, that happened to me. I remember when, so I did it on and off for a pretty long time. Like, I was always interested in trying a different product. But for whatever reason, I went back to the way I was doing things because I, I didn't really identify it as a problem, although I didn't enjoy it. I then found I have this problem when it comes to really minimalist marketing that tricks me, frankly. That's what gets me. Very minimalist, very quite modern. And I bought a one blade, and I bought that thing, and I thought this thing sucks. This thing isn't good, but there has to be a better way. And I found a double-edged razor. I then noticed all the different types of soap you can buy. I then started investing into the hobby, and I was hooked. I think kind of judging on the average user experience, we need to take advantage of the fact that what those people are probably using actually isn't that good.
From a daily shaver versus a hobbyist standpoint, even wet
Yeah, I mean,
shaving.
like, do you think guys that even have to shave every day are liking those cartridge razor shaves? I don't. Most of them aren't.
Oh, yeah, no. I thought you meant as far as people who are still using like a double edge or and like some sort of a like a decent soap, even if it's Tops or,
We've
Art of
got those,
Shaving or
though.
something like
I
more
feel we
commercial.
don't need to
But
grab those. We need to grab those guys that are still going to the cosmetic aisle in Target and buying their stuff.
right,
Well,
yes.
here's a curveball I'm going to
Sure.
throw at you. I have introduced people to shaving this way, and they get excited about it. They get like, interested, and I'll give them starter kits or I'll give them equipment to kind of get started. I'll stand there and shave with them. Sorry. I'll stand there and like show them kind of like the basics, the how to. But when they go and they shave by themselves, they may not have a great experience, or they may use too much pressure, or they may have like, a bad result, and it discourages
It
them
does.
from wanting to continue. So even
Yep.
though we're like trying to get people into it, if they don't have a good experience, they could easily get turned off and say, it's not for me. I'm going to go with what's comfortable or what I know.
I think.
Yes. And
Carry on, Heather.
that's exactly what happened with my husband and I. And so whenever I first started making shave soap, even before I became Zingari, under my previous brand, when I started making shave soap, it was because my husband had massive neck issues, right? And I thought, oh, I could do something to help him. And so I reached out to a retailer and I started carrying some brushes and some razors. And what he recommended for someone with zero experience using any sort of anything besides a cartridge razor, basically, was a twist to open with a sharp blade.
Sharks
And
suck
because
so
of the
much.
issue, well, especially the combination
Yeah.
for somebody who's never ever used a double edge. And I know this now. I mean, I was just as much at fault because I had no idea. And so I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. Give me one of those. I'll try it. And his neck got cut so bad. And because of the experience that he had, and he tried this several times. And I kept calling and I'm like, hey, like, this isn't working. What is the problem?
What did
Suggestions,
they
blah, blah, blah.
recommend?
And well, he actually recommended the balloon trick, like try to shave a balloon, try no pressure, try to tweak the the angle. It just wasn't working, and part of it was because it was such an aggressive combination for someone with sensitive skin who had no idea
Yeah.
what they were doing yet. It was just not a great recommendation. And this has been years now. It's been probably 3, 4 years maybe that this happened, and he still to this day will not try a double edge. Now he will use a brush and he will use a different soap, and some sort of a good artisan soap or something, but he will not try anything besides a cartridge razor because of the experience he had. And I feel like when people have no guidance or they're given this really shitty information or suggestions, in the beginning, it's such a deal breaker. It's a make or break
It's
type
a
scenario.
valid, very, very good point. And I think a lot of that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Having that information at hand for in that context, you or your husband, knowing, not having to rely on that one person, relying on a guy that really evidently knows about
Yeah.
what he's saying. Like if you see Nick shaves there, he'll recommend
Hmm.
things that we all think is good for beginners. He speaks for a lot of the community when he gives you your opinions. And frankly, I think that coupled with the idea of, as a industry, making products that are easier to use. The difficulty is, even if you're shaving with a double-edged razor, you can use any double-edged razor you want. There's going to be a learning curve. You can't get away from it. I think you
Right.
need to, as a seller, you need to assist people through that learning curve. I don't think enough companies make people understand that there's a learning curve. What I see on marketing is best shave of your life, no irritation, no X, no Y. When at first, I disagree. I think you are going to get some irritation. You are going to have some shit shaves at first.
Yes.
I think what you need to make people
Yeah.
understand is this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. I think it takes people a decent amount of time to really get used to shaving this way. For me, it took me 8, 9 months of doing it almost every day to stop getting regular irritation on my face. And I think if people understand, like, you've got the rest of your life ahead of you, you have time to perfect this. You've been shaving with shit stuff for 15, 16, 20, 25 years. There's time to use these products. There's time to learn how to use these products. But I think there's a few ways we can approach making that easier for the beginner.
Yeah, but don't you feel like, I mean, if you're going to stick with something for 8 or 9 months to learn it, you had to have had at least some aspect of it improve. You're not going to stick with terrible,
Oh,
shitty
absolutely.
shaves
Don't get
for
me
eight
wrong.
months to try to learn something in hopes
Sure,
that you're getting
it's
a
it's a
better shave in
gradual
the long run,
improvement, but you
right?
don't go from
Yeah.
shitty shaves to amazing shaves overnight. It doesn't work that way.
Right. But you have to have
You
some
do.
sort of improvement for people, I think, to want to stick with it. I mean, otherwise, what's the point of trying to like tough it out? You're not going to tough something out for six,
No,
eight
I
months and
think
hope that it
you'll
gets
eventually
better at
start.
some point.
You'll either start. There's two aspects to this, right? Let's say if you're that utilitarian I've discussed many times here. The aspects of this are you're noticing slowly growing improvements on your experience, or
Right.
you are buying into the hobby. And if you're buying into that hobby, I know hobbyists that still get pretty average shaves, but they love the community so much and they love that
Right.
aspect of it so much, they will still stick it through and, you know, try and get better at this. What do you think, JR?
I think there's two types of people, right? You have some people who will try to figure it out themselves. They're just like self starters. They have that, that desire to research and find, information that can help them, or tips or tricks, or look up the videos, or, really, really try it. Or you have people who just say, it's not for me, and they turn around and they go with what feels comfortable, even though they know, it probably was getting out of control in terms of price or the cost and things of that nature. It's tough, man, because the the hobby aspect is one thing for sure, and once you kind of like are exposed to this world that exists and all these people and this community, and for the most part it's very
It is, yeah.
positive and it's very encouraging, and it's
Yeah.
very generous too, right? There were
Yes.
times when I would, come into, and I would just ask a question about an item that the person was using, and right, without any hesitation, oh, I'll send you a
Yeah.
sample, or I'll send
Yeah.
it to you for you to try, so you kind of walk in and you're like, holy crap, like I didn't even ask for that, like I didn't
I
even do
think that
nothing, and I've got all these
I think a
people who are
lot of
so
it
willing
is
to
we're
share.
all so
Yeah.
hungry to get people into this. Like I've sold stuff to beginners, and I'm like, I'm gonna send you this, I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna send you this, I'm gonna send you this, just so you might experience that moment of positivity where you're like, yeah, this seems like a good idea.
Yeah. There's
Okay.
definitely a lot of generous people in 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 the hobby per se, and it doesn't really matter what forum you're on. You can be on Facebook, you can be on Instagram, you can be on Reddit, you can be on one of the actual forums, and you're going to see this. Reddit has piffs almost every day on some of their subs. There's constantly people on IG saying, "Oh, hey, like." You want to get a piff of this, or hey, do you want to try a sample of this, or I got this in, who wants to try it? There's constantly something out there, and that's what I love seeing as an artisan, because it does help spread the enthusiasm behind either a brand, a product, a scent, whatever it may be. um, but it's contagious, because giving is
Yeah, it
contagious,
is.
I feel like. So whenever you're constantly in an environment where people are always wanting to, like, they're happy to send you something to try it, it makes you want to turn around and do the same for others. So I feel like it's a cycle, and that is one of the great things that the wet shaving community is amazing about, whether it's fundraising, helping an artisan, Wild West, who had their, Derek had a house fire, and there was a big community drive for him. Like, things like that are just so contagious in the community. It's one of the best aspects in our community, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's difficult because if we're looking at it from that new shaver perspective, I think we have a bit of a culture now where you expect almost immediate results for a lot of things, right? And if you don't get those immediate results, you're like, oh, I'm not willing to stick it through. Uh, but I also think
Right.
there should be something embraced about what we do here, and we take our time with this stuff. We look after ourselves. We build a lather. There's understanding that not everyone can do that, and I think we need a way to kind of drag those people in and get them to embrace this. But then I think that's also a part of our hobby that is fantastic. The fact that we are using shaving as this almost ritualistic experience.
Mhm. Well, it's great me time, right? Like, I completely understood this once. Last year I was out of town with some girlfriends of mine, and I was getting ready for our event that we were out of town for, and they went to go to the store to pick something up real quick, and I was still getting ready, and I was putting my makeup on, I was having a drink, I was having the music on, and it was just like this self-pampering, like 20 minutes of time. I was in my zone, and I feel like all of a sudden it clicked, and I was like, holy shit, this is one of the things that really draws some of the people into wet shaving, because it is your, like, your pamper me time, right? It's your, like, personal time. You can do whatever the hell you want for your 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is. So I feel like for people who need that, like, to step away, or that pampering time too, I feel like it's a really good, um it's a really
It
good
is,
positive thing to
and it's
do
funny
too.
because
So yeah.
if here's an example. This is a good example. I never thought if you spoke to me a few years ago and said you're gonna enjoy shaving so much that not only do you look forward to doing it every day, but when you are doing it, if it's going well, you do not want it to stop. Like I find myself saying, no, Jack, you need to stop now because you're going to end up destroying your skin. Oh, but this feels so good. Like, it's going so well. Do you have that, JR? You know what I mean, right?
Well, sadly, going back to my comment, I can only shave like
So
two,
that,
three
but do you
times a
savor
week.
that?
So, well, this is what's crazy, right? So now that I have to wait 2 or 3 days, I have to like let the hair grow, and then it's almost like now I value each
Oh, it's
shave
so
even
good.
more.
I love
So
it.
like what I pick and what I use and the scent and the razor and the blade, I'm like, I can't
Oh,
screw this
no.
up because then I'm gonna have to wait 2 or 3 more days before I can do it again. You know what I mean?
The
So
pressure.
it's not as quick and easy as some people. So yeah, there's more pressure when it comes to selecting the right shade. And that was part of my journey when it came to cutting out what was just too
Yeah.
much, right? Like I had to really focus on personal preferences and what gave me consistently good results. Like I had to because I couldn't waste any
I
shaves.
love that, though. Like, the idea of wasting shaves is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, for me, yeah,
But then
I
I
couldn't do
also
it.
feel that, like, when I'm picking at a product, I'm like, ah, but that would be so amazing today as well. And in truth, everything I have in that general vicinity is going to give me such a remarkable shave. I'm going to want it to last even
Yeah.
longer. It's, it's mad, because if you'd have said to me I'd have felt this way a few years ago, I'd have been like, it's just shaving. Like, why would I ever do
Right.
that? But no, I get it, and I hope that a lot of beginners, if they do start it and things do hopefully go well, they start getting involved in what we're doing here. It's such a enthralling thing to be a part of.
Yeah. So, JR, let me ask you this. So going back to, you have to make your shaves as best as possible because you can only shave a few times a week. So for people who may not know this, um, do you want to tell people like how we kind of met? Because I feel like that is definitely a big thing for you. You are very giving for your time and those like precious shaves that you may have a few times a week. You're very
Yeah,
giving into
I've noticed
helping
that too.
people in that time. And you do a lot of testing for a lot of artisans, and you help a lot of us out with that. So, do you want to give a little bit of background? You and I met a few years ago, actually.
Yeah.
You're my oldest tester, so to speak. So, as far as like longevity,
Okay, so yes. And lather. Oh man, I'm trying to figure out where to start here. Um, so I guess going all the way back to the beginning, like the lathering process is something that I've always enjoyed. Even though
hmm
I couldn't shave, I could still work and get better at lathering. So I took a lot of time doing that with the different waters, the different water incorporation, the different brush knots, the different techniques. Like I just wanted to learn more about that. So that goes all the way back to the beginning and as part of me and my journey. That being said, it was always a challenge for me when I got a new soap to figure it out how to make it the best possible to achieve the best possible results or get the best performance out of that product. I didn't have a set, strict, standard method. I liked to play around and test and see what I could do with it. And so that was another aspect of the different soap formulas, the different soap um, types and lathering techniques that have carried through for the years. And then a big thing as this artisan community started to like blossom and blow up, there were like new soaps coming out, new makers and new products. Just you couldn't keep up, to be honest with you. There was just so many things coming out that it was overwhelming to even figure out what to try. So a lot of times I would, get samples from friends or I would like, share or do pass arounds and things like that. And I want to say I think you were trying to, like, you were still Smitten Soapery, but you wanted to rebrand.
I
And you
was
did
working
like
on the
a
rebrand.
post,
Yeah,
you did a post asking for testers or people who would
testers.
like give you feedback.
Yep.
And one of my buddies, Ian, he actually signed up for it and then he tagged me, right? He and I happened to be part of like a little group and a pass around and we've known each other for a few years.
Yep.
And it just goes back to saying yes and giving it a shot. And then once you get involved kind of behind the scenes and you see the passion, you see the
Yeah.
drive, you see the focus and determination of wanting to do good, right? So that stood out to me. You were not in it for, you weren't trying to rush this, right? You wanted to be one of the, I guess, go-to or at least top five, I think. You had like specific goals.
I
You had
did.
things that you were determined to I guess achieve, and
Mhm.
you put your time and your money into it. Like you were not joking, right? You were all in.
Yeah.
So all these little things kind of like stood out to me as like, okay, she really wants this. So for me, it was about trying to give honest feedback,
I
right?
have a
It's not
question,
a necessary.
actually,
Here's what I'll say.
really quick.
Go ahead.
I know you
What do you got?
do it. I know you test for quite a lot of people. How regularly is it in this industry that people are really eager to rush something into people's hands in terms of like a new formula or something?
That's going to be a case by case basis. I think, and like I said, I don't know personally because I'm not in that situation, but I have seen some patterns. Um, it's not a full-time gig for a
No.
lot of these people. A lot of times it's a hobby or a side business. But when you're testing or you're developing, all that money is being spent into these
Yeah.
ingredients and these batches that
Yes.
are not giving you any
No.
return on that investment. So I hate to say it, but there are times where you can't just keep
No.
dumping money into it without starting to make some of it back, because now you're going to accrue a big debt. So I think some makers do their best to, I guess, tweak or adjust these formulas as much as they can and as much as, financially they're able to before they need to start making their money back on the
Yeah.
product.
Yes. Yeah, testing is R&D is very expensive. I mean, I don't recall what I spent whenever I rebranded from Smitten to Zengari for the vegan that I launched, but from when I started with Zengari Man and I launched the tallow, I easily spent like $1,500 testing. And some of that's not including my time really. That's just like actual
Time
cost of
is probably
ingredients
the
and
most
shipping.
expensive part, really.
Time is crazy because you can spend so much time in it, and then like when you send it out, you're waiting, you're relying on your
Yeah.
testers,
She
to get back with
as
you.
soon as as soon as these packages are starting to arrive, she was like so eager to like, okay, guys, hurry up and shave with it. Like, let me know
I
what's
like
going
that
on.
though.
And
Like, get
JR
on it
sucks because she
already.
can't shave for like 3 days.
JR's like, in some ways, JR's the worst tester because it takes
Yeah,
him like,
that's what.
he's got like a 4-day turnaround time for every
Oh,
sample you
yeah.
send him.
I mean,
So,
I've
uh,
I've gotten to the point where I will lather test. I won't necessarily shave, but I will, lather test in a bowl. I will face lather just to get a sense of the performance or kind of gauge some of the metrics. I can still check density and ease of lather and slickness and post shave without
I
actually
think
shaving.
an important
So,
aspect of it for me, of being a useful tester, like I've tested for a few artisans as well. I think you may have your own use case. Like, I'm probably not wrong, JR, in saying you have your way of doing things, right? So do I.
yeah.
Like, I'm only a tub loader and a face latherer, but I think as a tester, I need to cover as many variables as I can. And I've had it where artisans are like, so what did you think? It's really good, but I've not done this yet. And it's almost like I have to go through these steps to make sure that I've ticked all of these boxes until I say, this is the feedback I have for you. Your product was good with this, good with this, good with this, not so good with this. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, the variables are really important when it comes to testing products.
Absolutely. The sad thing that I think people kind of get trapped with is they say what they think
Yeah,
the artisan wants
absolutely.
to hear. They don't
no,
just want to hear that it's great, that it's awesome, that it's fantastic. Like you have
no.
to give them honest, and here's the thing too, right? So you want to be honest, you want to be fair, and you want to cover both sides. There have to be things that you kind of point out in favor, and then you have to be honest about some things that may not be as good or could use some improvement.
Yeah.
But how you deliver that constructive criticism is also important, because you don't just want to say it stinks without telling them why, or
Right.
it wasn't good for you, but then you don't explain why or how it wasn't that well. I mean, like you kind of mentioned earlier, if you're going to be if you're going to be a person who loads heavy versus loads in a minute, or sorry, wants to lather in a minute, you have
Yeah,
huge
huge.
variables there. Your brush knot type is going to be a factor. How much water you use is going to be a factor. How heavy of a load. Some people want to lather quick, and they want to do a one pass shave, and they want to be done because time is the most essential thing to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to account for that with the ease of lathering, and I'll do that too. I'll say, okay, let me time it. Let me try and get, a quick load. It's a bubbly mess, but can I get there? Can I still achieve those results in the short amount of time versus sitting there and like fine tuning and perfectly getting the look or
Well,
the density or
I've
the
found
feel that I
most
want.
things, if you have 10, 15 minutes to lather, you can create an incredible lather in 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah,
I think the
yeah, you can
metric I
get
really
there.
care about and the metric where my favorite soaps lie, although I have the time to measure 15 minutes, I don't want to lather for 15 minutes really. My favorite soaps are quick. I start to see those results fast. And I don't think that's something that's really spoken about enough, quite honestly. Yeah,
Ease of lather.
that's a completely different topic.
Yeah,
It is. And it's one of the things whenever I was getting the feedback on Sago that I was the most paranoid about actually because
yeah,
I mean, admittingly, and I've said this here many times, it's not necessarily the easiest base for a beginner to use. Like if they don't add enough water, they're going to get a good shave, but they're not going to get
That's the
the
thing
best
though.
shave that they could
I
with that
think the
product,
margin
you
for error
know?
though is still
So,
pretty big because you can add so much water. I would rather be in a situation where I still have a usable lather to where I'm not going to call anyone out, but I've used some soaps where if you add too much water, the soap's dead. Like you've drowned it out so
yeah, it just
easily.
dissipates.
Um, I
Yeah.
prefer the thirsty, like really thirsty, to the not thirsty enough, and then you end up just destroying it on your face. I think you need to find a perfect balance there.
So, JR, is someone who has tested for, like, I have a very specific method, and thankfully, I'm going to give a shout out to Eric Shaves. He is, he's awesome. As soon as I started testing for my tallow, and he came on, he set me up with a really good system because it was like it incorporated what he did for a living.
yeah. The
So it,
surveys.
yeah, the survey. So I had a consistent survey for every single sample that I sent out, and I could print out my information. I could say this formula had this feedback specifically, and I got the consistent feedback every time. Not necessarily the same feedback, but I got it on these set parameters that I wanted with an open area for like free texting like feedback. So that really helped me a lot. But what do you see like as an artisan, whenever I said, "Hey, I'm going to start, doing some testing for tallow," and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh, I'll help, I'll help, I'll help," and I wanted a variety of like ranges and preferences and experience to bring into that, so that I kind of hit all points. But at the same time, like we spend a lot of time and money on our testing, so you don't want to just send something out to somebody who's going to be like, "Oh, it's
Yeah,
great," because that's
I
not what
think
we
they need to
need.
be
We
valuable.
need criticism, constructive criticism, not just like it's shit. Not to
Yeah.
say that y'all didn't get shit. I'm just saying. Um, what do you see like when people are eager to test for artisans? Like, what do you think some of the biggest mistakes, or what do you think you bring different to the table? Because you do test for a lot of people. Most of us are familiar with that. What do you think that difference is on somebody who's just wanting a free product to say that, oh, yeah, I got one of their testers versus somebody who's actually giving benefit to the artisan? Because I feel like if you have a good tester, it's almost invaluable. And I feel like I need to do what I can to also help that tester and to like keep them like happy. And I don't mean that by like bribing or anything, but I mean like it's kind of a two-way situation. It's a two-way relationship.
Yeah, I think right there what you just said, and you know it's one of my favorite words. It's a value exchange, right? When you say you get reached out to, it depends, right? Like a lot of times artisans will either reach out or they'll make a post saying they're looking for people, or I mean whatever the case may be. As the tester, I think it's important for you to communicate with the artisan or the maker what the goal or what the
Absolutely.
desired intent or what the destination is, right? Tell me what you're looking for. Tell me what improvements you're trying to make in this formula, just so that I can kind of maybe focus in on those or give a little more detailed pictures or information about those particular things. Sometimes they'll add things and say, "Oh, I'm going for a better post shave, or I'm going for a better slickness or residual slickness, or whatever the case may be." Or they're just saying, "Hey, can you compare this to my last version?" So it helps if I have, the previous version, and then I'm comparing it against the new version, and I'll do
Yeah.
a side by side, and I'm feeling on my, on my face, and I try to use the same type of knot. I try to use the same bowl. I try to like keep those variables very consistent, and then really compare the two if I have that opportunity. But it goes back to just being honest. I mean, honesty is really the big thing. And you have to, the way I see it is I'm going to give these artisans the same time and effort, and I'm going to do as much as I can because I know they're doing the same thing to try and get better, right? And going back to that point of, it gets expensive to keep doing, consistent tweaks or changes.
Yes.
Not everybody can afford 27 versions. So for me, I think if I can really help and give them valuable feedback that can minimize the amount of changes that are necessary, it helps them not have to spend so much money and start to get a return on the improvements they're going for. I like to let the product, I like to take pictures and show like a stage development to let the product kind of speak for itself. There's some things that you can say in written word, and there's some things that are so much easier to explain with a picture or a short video to say, look, this is what I'm getting, this is what's happening. Um, all of that stuff has kind of been a learning process for me as I've done different testing, and I've gotten to know some of these different artisans and hear what they're looking for or the improvements they want to make. It also helps, I'm not going to lie, it helps that I've used
Yeah.
so much product in the past, so I can give them
Yes.
honest feedback about, like, I'm not trying to brag, but I've used a lot of product to give you comparisons. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to say it's the best thing I've ever used when I've only used 10 things, right?
Right.
So it does kind of help to have that past experience or that inventory or those references to kind of call back and
Yeah.
say, this is kind of performing a certain way, comparable to something I used before, or maybe not as well. Because that's the other thing too, right? If I'm going to tell you it's not that slick, it's because I've tried
Yeah.
something that's slicker. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah. No.
So it's
Absolutely.
not about really comparing or sizing people up, but I can give them the honest feedback that there is an increased potential for more slickness,
What I would
if
say
that
is,
makes
I would say
sense.
a lot of people that are reaching out to be testers are either looking to be in the in crowd or they're looking for free product. I think for people that want to be testers, no,
Ah,
dude, I'm not lying. I tell it like it is.
Here's what I'll say, right? You can control it. Here's what I'll tell you. If you want to be a tester, test what you
Yeah,
currently have. Stop. Don't be the person looking to get the new item. If you really want to add value, or you really want to say like, "Hey, I'm a good tester," practice with what you got, right? Create
Mm.
content, create the information, put it out there to kind of say like, this is what I do, this is what I can do. And then maybe somebody who makes soap will take notice of that, or maybe a friend
that's
will, you know
happened
what I
to
mean?
me.
Like, start with what you can do first, right? If you want to be a tester,
Yeah.
then create some content or make some posts or some videos of how you would be unique, or how you have a different angle, or you could give them value based on what you do. And you don't need their new product to do that. Do that with
I
what you
agree. That's
currently
that's a
have.
good way of
Yeah.
kind of capping off this topic, I think. Kind of as we close this down, it's been a pleasure to have you here, JR. I've spoken to you quite a bit in the past, and you always have good insight on things, and I know how familiar you are with Heather, so it was just an obvious
Yeah,
progression.
like 2 years
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
Before we go, do you have any plugs, Heather?
I just restocked number one, and I do believe there is some of that left. I also have an exciting and a project that I'm very passionate about that I'm working on, and this is a tribe project, and it's a fundraiser. It is a fundraiser to go towards people that are considered the essential
Okay.
workers right now, or the healthcare workers. So I have two new soaps coming out. One is called the Essentials, and one is called the Healers. And I'm hoping those will release this weekend. It kind of depends on if I can get the labels in by then, but by this weekend or next weekend at the latest. And $5 for each
That's quite
product,
a
not
lot.
just soap, but soap or balm. Yeah, so $10 for
Wow.
every set that is sold will actually be donated to charity. So I'm super excited about it.
Okay. My plugs are I've really stepped up the amount of content creation I'm doing with all this coronavirus bullshit. So if you have only watched the podcast, check out my own YouTube stuff if you like the look of me on here. Probably not the look because I'm not selling myself there. If you like what I say, yeah, that's pretty much what I got. What about you, JR?
I've got two things I'd like to mention, right? Um, so, without naming names, a buddy of mine has kind of like his own side business. And due to the circumstances, it got hit pretty hard and he's in a tough spot. So, he reached out and asked if I wanted to purchase a couple of vintage brush handles. And they're like kind of rare and desirable. So, I was like, oh, yeah, man, that'd be great. And then I kind of paused and I said, you know what? Let me help him out, you know? So what I did is I said, send me the handles. I'd like to donate my services. I'd like to restore these for you. I kind of want to just
That's
auction them
awesome.
off. I'll start at like a fair, reasonable price. And then if it goes up, it goes up. If not, then it's fine. But I want to give him all that money just to help him out. So I've got two Ever Readies here. One is
Wow,
like a
that's
black
so
with
cool.
this like this like camo swirl,
Yeah,
and that's going to be a 24 millimeter. And then I've got this other Ever Ready, like a cream with a blue
they look
swirl,
great.
and that's going to be a 20
Okay.
millimeter. So
Oh,
um, ordered some knots, and when they come in, I'll post them up. They'll be on Instagram, and like I said, it's not about me. It's about doing what I can to help out. I think we've all been in those
Yeah.
situations before, and so it just kind of struck me. I was like, you know what can I do to help out? So that's what I want to do.
so
And the other thing, I think I've been receiving a lot of product and mail calls and testers and things like that. So I feel like the pendulum is swung a little too heavy on the receiving side. I'd like to turn around and give. And then the competitive nature in me is like, well, what's the highest view count of the Razorburn podcast so far? Do you guys
Oh
know?
yeah. It.
Do we know what the
I'm
most
not
views
gonna.
is?
I'm not gonna
I,
say,
So
but I know what it is.
so that you know what it is, all right? So that being said, if this episode can surpass that view count, then I'm gonna put together like a
you can
package
totally
of
though.
goodies and I'm gonna give it out. So do me a favor, guys. Watch the video, comment below either a
Yeah.
question that you guys want to have us to follow up on, or comment your favorite part of the episode, whatever it may be, right? But we're gonna pass. It's gonna be the best episode yet. We're gonna give away stuff, and all you gotta do is just chime in, and we'll pick
So
a winner.
the
So
something
that's all.
that's amazing actually, and
JR,
something I'd like to add really is these discussions are also made for you guys to give us your opinions as well. You know, I don't want these
Yes.
discussions to start and end here. I want them to carry on below because for me, most of the reason I started this podcast with Heather was to create these discussions and to keep them going, to make people understand everyone's point of view. And that really is assisted by commenting down. That's what we have a comment section for. It's just let's chat about this.
Yeah, and we tried to make sure that we respond to comments and like because especially compared to people like JR and others. I'm definitely new in the hobby and I'm always constantly learning. And while I have dove in quite a bit, I feel like in the past like year and a half that I've been in the hobby side of it versus just the soap maker side of it, I still have a lot to learn. So I love the
Yeah.
conversing. It helps me learn as well. And I feel like everybody has a different experience, so we can all learn something from each other. So the conversation is definitely important. So please, whatever it may be, feedback,
Anything.
criticism, something on, yeah, something on the topics that we discussed or something maybe in the future you would like us to like dive deeper into, please just hit us up and let us know because we do check all the comments
Awesome.
out.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, JR, for coming, and I imagine we will have you back at some point in the future. I hope all you guys are staying safe and staying indoors. I hope these podcasts and other wet shaving content is keeping you entertained in the meantime. Apart from that, we will see you all
Mhm.
next week. Have a great day.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Thanks for having me. It was a